What is up, my friends? Welcome to this video. In this video, a little bit different of a topic. This is not having to do with the macro economy. This is not having to do with economics at all. This is having to do with you. This is having to do with personal happiness, something that I've been on I guess you could consider lifelong journey of discovery myself. At the core, we all want more happiness, right? We're all seeking more happiness in some sort of way. So we attempt to try to fill it. We try to fill it with stuff. We try to fill it with love. We try to fill it with other people. We try to fill it with travel. We try to fill it with these external things to fulfill this internal desire, this internal feeling, right? So let's talk through this. Let's talk about this. So Nikola Tesla is by far one of my favorite people that I've researched. Just the sheer amount of information that he was able to distill into an understandable way is amazing. And what he understood, regardless of who or what gave it to him, is absolutely amazing. Here's a quote of his: "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration." And I start there because I think in similar terms. I think that everything works off of a frequency, a wavelength, vibration, and it's all energy. We have the double slit experiment, which basically proved that upon observation, it took physical form, and then as soon as the observation was removed, it went back to being energy. So if we take that as truth, that fundamentally at the core, everything starts off as energy, and then through observation becomes manifest into something real, I guess, or something that the five senses can recognize, then that gives us a pretty good advantage for how to create our own little happiness formula. So at the core, most people are not happy. They're living in the past. They're guilting and shaming themselves in some sort of way. And this is one of the easiest ways to manipulate somebody, is to invoke these feelings of guilt or shame about something they've done in the past, some decision they've made, something that didn't work out, a business venture that failed. That's one of the easiest ways to manipulate somebody and attempt to break them down. So that's why I wanted to start with that. Turned out that Einstein, even though there's a lot of misquotes, I actually dug this up. And one of the quotes that he in fact did say was that mass and energy are both different manifestations of the same thing. Talking in similar terms is what Nikola Tesla said, just a little bit more dubious. There's this saying, one of the Four Noble Truths that everybody talks about in Buddhism, which is that life is suffering, right? Well, that's actually a misinterpretation. It was life is dukkha, was the actual noble truth that was talked about by the Buddha. I just wanted to lay this out because there's this big misconception that life should be hard, life should be suffering, and that's part of it, right? So just suck it up and deal with it. Here's the actual definitions and the categorization of dukkha: suffering or pain, impermanence or change itself, conditioned states. And so impermanence or change is the one that I really want to focus on, because the way I interpret it the most is that it just means that life is change. Life is always changing. Life is always evolving. There is some truth, though, to the suffering and pain part, which I want to talk about as well. So life is suffering. There's a lot of truth to that, right? Because a lot of people are living in the past, so they're living in a state of fear about the past, living out of the past. Oh, gosh, don't recreate it. Don't make the same mistakes. Remember what you learned. Remember what you studied. And then living in a state of hope about the future. And so what are we missing in this equation? We're missing the present moment, aren't we? Let's go through this. I don't have a clear whiteboard. 4 whiteboards and all of them are filled, but I figured I'd just whip this up really quick. And yes, this looks like a little kid wrote it. That was me that wrote it. I wrote it with my mouse and a little draw pencil over here. So that is what it looks like when you don't really use a software like this and you're trying to use your mouse. So it looks like a little kid wrote it. Yes, I do recognize that. Okay, so fear, guilt, shame, what I just kind of essentially talked about. So there's this present moment missing. Why is everyone, I live in the East now. I live in Asia. Why did I come here? I came here because I was running away from myself. I was seeking, I was searching, I was trying to discover more happiness. I was trying to discover the hack, the trick. What is actually going to be the thing that improves my quality of life and increases my happiness? I was not happy at the time, still searching. Why am I here? What is this life stuff? And this, regardless if you have people who, they try and dismiss it with science and they try and kind of box out this whole categorization of spirituality because it makes them uncomfortable, and so they cling to science. And that's part of really like the big battle that I see going on right now, is that there's a ton of people that are clinging to science and they don't want to hear about spiritual. And if the 5 senses can't prove it right or prove it to be real, then it's not real to me. and it doesn't exist, and it's just placebo, which they discredit. Like they leverage placebo as a means to discredit something, which that's magic in and of itself, because if I can take something that's fake and create a real result, why are we not studying that more, right? I guess that's kind of an obvious question, but because it makes them feel uncomfortable to hide from it, right? And then they'll try and stand on the soapbox and guilt and shame, once again, the people who are into it. But you notice how those people, like, they're never trying to guilt and shame like the Dalai Lama. They're trying to guilt and shame like maybe a Westerner who's emerged as some sort of thought leader or guru of some sort, right? Which even the term guru actually originated from Hindu and had positive, I guess, intentions behind it. The definition of that word, there are people in the Hindu culture that are born into being a guru, that are born into being a leader, okay? Back to happiness. Happiness itself is something that can be attained. Most people, because of the construct that they've created for themselves, their beliefs, their worldviews, and the delusion that they've created, they can't see past that. And it's really hard to shake them out of that to get them to see a different perspective. Whereas me, myself, like through my journey and through my experiences in life, I learned quite quickly that I couldn't be glued to my beliefs, because I was being proved wrong so often that, and it wasn't from necessarily a scientific standpoint, is that I had to kind of abandon a lot of these things that I thought to be true because they no longer were, right? In some sort of way, they no longer were. You know, for the longest time, I think back to when I was, you know, involved in fitness and in biohacking and trying to apply all this science to things. And it wasn't until really that I really started to dive deep into spirituality that so much of that was proven wrong. And so many of these holy people that I met were able to talk about such depth and deep scientific topics and quantum physics and explain these things, but in a very simple way. They've never studied these topics. They've never studied mathematics or quantum physics, quantum mechanics, yet they were able to explain those concepts. How is that possible? Right? And there was just so many of those things that began to happen that I wasn't the same, I guess you could say. So anyways, the formula itself, all we're trying to do is get back to the present moment. The West is now trying to rediscover themselves, and so they're all traveling to the East. Yoga is on the rise, healthy eating, organic. Where do you think all that's coming from? You think that's coming from everyone's just content and happy and they just, oh yeah, well, it's organic, so duh. No. People are not happy. They are not content. They want more happiness. And so they are seeking. So the East is bringing over all these old ancient methods and technologies that you can't really explain with science. You can't explain meditation really with science. They're just now starting to be able to, with EEG machines and this brain scan technology, to be able to measure different areas in the brain, gray matter, brainwave frequencies, so gamma, alpha, beta, delta, theta, etc. They're able to measure that in different ways now, which is all been proved correct. So we got yoga coming over, we got mindfulness, meditation coming over, and all that is that it's people trying to find more happiness. It's that simple, okay? And this is a topic that, as you can tell, I'm very, very much interested in. The happiness formula, I've talked about this throughout the years and kind of presented it different ways. I want to keep talking about this and bring this back into the conversation is because I've really seen the biggest shifts in my life happen over this last 2 years during times when I've lost the most amount of money I've ever lost in my life. I should be sad, right? I should be depressed. I should feel guilty and feel ashamed, right? What will my family think? What will my friends think? What will my loved ones think, right? And during this time, I've been able to be the happiest I've ever been in my life. That should not be possible. Like, everything is mounted against me in that sense, but yet I've been able to remain happy. And what do you know? More and more luck shows up at my door. More and more great things happen regardless of these outside things, right? Where do we start with all of this? We have to start with forgiveness. What I suggest is you sit down, or as you're in bed in the morning and you're just kind of getting started. I wake up at 4 a.m. each day. So as I'm just kind of waking up, rolling out of bed, I don't check my phone. I don't, log on to Instagram or Facebook or any of those things. But the first thing that I do is I go through a quick little exercise. Tony Robbins does the same thing. So if you like Tony Robbins, then maybe you'll listen to my words even more. He does an exercise where, I can't remember exactly, but it's in Tools for Titans by Tim Ferriss. I believe he talks about it in that book. He does, I believe, a 9 or 10 minute exercise where it goes through 3 minutes for this, 3 minutes for that, 3 minutes for that. Then he goes and does his cold dip and, all of his other, regimen and supplements and all that. But I start in the morning and I just forgive myself. Which sounds silly, right? Like, okay, and then do you just forgive yourself once and then it's done, or do you keep doing it? I do it every day. I actually start my meditation after I've kind of gone through my breathing and I'm set down and I'm kind of in my zone. I go through and I forgive myself again. You can never forgive yourself too much. There's no such thing as too much forgiveness. I don't believe so. You know, laying in bed before you get started, you could do the same thing there. Now, there's this like sort of dreamy zone that you're still in. You're kind of coming out of a deep sleep, but the delta or theta brainwave pattern at that time in the morning. So you're more programmable, okay? Just like right before you're about to go to bed, you're more programmable. So these are the 2 times a day that you should really try and do a lot of the deep-seated change that you're looking to accomplish. But it starts with forgiveness, because we can't move forward until we've actually acknowledged and attempted to patch the past, right? So forgive yourself. Okay, forgive yourself about the past, about everything that's gone wrong, everyone that you've wronged, everyone that you've stolen from, everyone you've lied to, everyone that you've let down in some sort of way. Just forgive yourself for that. Next is that most people argue with their reality. That reminds me of this Byron Katie quote that I've never let go of. It's just always stuck in my mind. When I argue with reality, I lose, but only 100% of the time. Hard hitting, right? What that means is that reality and what's going on around you right now, you cannot change. You have to accept that that is what's going on right now. You don't have to like it. Nobody's saying you like it and oh my God, but you don't understand it's good, because no. It's teaching you something, and from that standpoint, it's beneficial to your growth. But accepting the reality is just simply coming to terms with where you're at. Now, we can always change, because in any given moment, again, we go back to the energy frequency conversation, is that couldn't, through different thoughts, we immediately start to shift and change our future and our potential future? The answer is yes. Accept the current reality. That's all that is just accepting everything that's going on. And we're getting closer and closer towards a present moment experience here through this little 3-step process, this little formula, if you want to call it that. And then the third thing is surrender to the unknown. When we meditate, when we sit down in our mindfulness practice, is we are going from the 5 sense model, the senses model, to have sense, to a no sense or nonsense, which is kind of funny in and of itself, a nonsense state where we are going within. We can't be at peace with others until we're at peace with ourselves. The reason why war continues, the reason why all these wars on different things continue, is it's just a reshaping of the same inner unhappiness by a big enough collective, and it just keeps manifesting itself in different ways in the physical. So we need to surrender to the unknown, because in that's when we finally can become present. Through our breathing, through our mindfulness, through forgiving the past, through removing this guilting and shaming and this fear and of the past and this hoping of the future, we are just becoming beautifully present with right now. And that's where the magic occurs. I believe that life itself is simple, and so therefore everything within the system should be simple. Now note, I'm not saying easy, but you look at Buddhism, you look at Hindu, and you really study that scripture, those stories, they're simple. They're very simple. And so this is very simple, right? So much so to where, like, there's been so many points that I've explained this to people or given this to people in some sort of way, and they just kind of look at you like, that's it? Yeah, well, duh, I know that. Like, everyone knows that you should forgive yourself. Yeah, of course, you forgive yourself. Yeah, of course, accept the reality. Why would I try and argue with the reality? But then when it comes down to it, being alive in your life, we rarely do these things. We rarely forgive yourself. You rarely accept the current reality. We're arguing with it, because what happens, right? So you get in trouble at work, you call somebody on your lunch hour, and what do? You complain about it. Is that accepting your reality? No. Something you don't like, you find somebody in your circle that's kind of like that person that you essentially talk shit to, and you guys both just call each other up and complain about stuff like, oh man, yeah, and then at work today, this guy, then I went on social media, and can you believe that the president said this, and can you believe that, this thought leader that I had so much respect for said or did this. And it's like we're continuing the suffering. So, and we come right back to life is suffering, because we're creating our own suffering. We're creating our own happiness on a micro level, with every micro decision that we make, every micro commitment that we make to the past, to unhappiness, towards these habits, right? You got to understand something is that the ego is just a defense mechanism. And some of these older layers of the brain, right? Like we got the brain triune model, we've got the reptilian brain, the limbic system in the middle, and the newest discovery, the neocortex on the outside. Well, a lot of this fight or flight and this old way of thinking comes from the reptilian brain, the lizard brain. And so just because you're having those feelings that are maybe telling you this thing or another thing doesn't mean you have to respond to them, doesn't make them real because they're happening, because you're feeling them, excuse me. So the ego is just, think of it like a software program that's like, it's trying to map the most productive way for the operating system to work, just like a computer does. And it's got the built-in antivirus stuff, and it's got the built-in, productivity scanning, and look what you just got done last week. And all that's kind of built into the system. And so it's always seeking the most proficient way, or the most efficient way to get things done. And it's based on what you're feeding it. So what you're feeding it with your thoughts. So it comes all the way back down to like, we get these feelings which create these thoughts, and then these thoughts gone unchecked over enough time start to turn into a habit, because neural network wise, neurons that fire together start to wire together. So we start to create this neural network, this neural cluster around these thoughts, which create this habit, turns into a behavior, and before you know it, they're character traits. And then it's just, oh, that's how Jim is. Coming all the way back down to the beginning is all of that is just part of the operating system of you. So it doesn't make it a truth because it's familiar. It doesn't make it a truth because it's comfortable or because you're used to it. It just means that you're comfortable or used to it, okay? What I suggest, and a healthy challenge for you, is to apply this. Like, just take a couple minutes in the morning, like maybe just getting out of bed super early, just sit down. Sit down anywhere. Sit down in your room on the floor. I would say lay down in bed, but you might fall back asleep, so maybe not. And we don't want you to be late for work or whatever you've got going on for that day. So maybe just like sit down on the floor. And most people, we suck at sitting what we call Indian style or lotus position in the beginning, but just kind of try and sit down, find a little comfort in that position, and go through this. Just like imagine you're talking to yourself, forgive yourself, accept, and just sit with it and feel it. And then as things come up, forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. Mind starts to quiet down. Go into number 2, accept the current reality. No, but let it come down, let it come down, let it come down. And it's like dissolving. It's almost like you're wearing out the ego reactions by just sitting with it and not interacting with it, not playing with it, not allowing that thread to build, not allowing that weed to grow. You're just sitting with it, and it almost dissolves it out. So it uses all of its inertia and wears itself out, and it's like, okay, it's all dissolved out, and then surrender to the unknown. And before you know it, you're having a pretty mystical experience. You're having a pretty amazing experience happening through you, right? In a very short amount of time, 5-10 minutes a day. Like, you don't need to travel to Tibet or to Asia or the other side of the world and meet holy men and go to temples to just increase a little bit of happiness in your life. You don't need that. You can do something just as simple as this. And what's interesting about a formula like this is that you can read echoes of this through hundreds of books. I didn't create this. Nothing new is under the sun. I believe it comes back to this frequency thing, whereas if you can get your mind or your brainwave pattern to a certain frequency, to a certain state, then you just get access to things. And I believe that's how Nikola Tesla was able to come up with so much of what he discovered, 500 plus patents at the time of his death, and technology that we're still rediscovering to this day back in the early 1900s. How is it possible? Well, if he was in fact human, then I think that this is probably how he was doing it. What I'm talking about here, I mean, you could do this the hard way and just go and start researching Buddhism and Zen and Hindu, and you'd hear a lot of these same concepts echoed through that, or you could just listen to what I'm saying and apply this to your life and see what happens. Now, I'd love for you to just apply this for a simple amount of time, 3 days or 7 days. Pick one or the other and do it every morning for just give yourself 5 minutes. We can all commit to 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes every day. And then come back to the comment section and let me know how it goes. Or if you're in the Discord community, then jump in there and let me know how this has worked out for you, okay? Okay, that's it, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you like this. If you do, I'd love to hear your thoughts below in the comments section. If you want to show us some support, just click the thumbs up the like button. And if this is your first time to the channel and you found us, well, welcome. And go ahead and click the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you get more of our notifications. If you want to support us financially, then there's going to be some links underneath this video, starting with a Patreon where you can subscribe for just $1 a month. Yes, $1 does go a long way. Yes, little old you by yourself can create a huge difference and support us in a way that allows us to create more and more content and keep up with what we're doing now. Or there's other affiliate links, and you can support us by just purchasing things you regularly purchase, but through those links. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Be on the lookout, more content dropping soon. Bye.